as a panel of judges intervening in an operational decision made by the government about how to deal with a group who are admittedly, to use your word, a terrorist group.
Yes, I think that is a fair assessment. There, the judges took the view that they had to make that decision because they said, even though the impact on the sign holders, those are the old people who carry the banners, that can be put to one side because they knew what they were doing. And even though people can still go march for Palestine, you don't have to support Palestine Action to march for Palestine. They nonetheless said, having sort of in the air, having these terrorist offences floating around could have an impact. And that impact is so profound, they said, that therefore they had to really think, was this using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, effectively?
So two things. To what extent is it unusual and unhelpful for a law court to decide on an operational matter of national security judged by a government?
Well, I suppose it depends on how many decisions you want to allow judges to look at. I mean, they're bound to look at some decisions. I don't think it's so much a question of saying judges can never look, but it's more looking at when the judges should decide that they know best.
Yes.
And generally speaking, judges take the view that we don't. Now, I don't want to characterise this as sort of a mad decision because there are, Tom, lots and lots of organisations that could, in theory, qualify as terrorists, given the width of the definition. So it's often the question, how do you respond? The government failed to persuade the court that responding in this way was the right way of dealing with it. And I think that the way in which I'm sure the government is going to appeal is to say, hang on a second, a court should, we're not saying the court can never look at that question, but they should be very careful to say that we know better than the government. I think that's where it's going to be.
Do you think the definition then of what could constitute a terrorist group is too wide if it could involve groups like Palestine Action?
No, and I suppose this is the way this answers your question. I don't actually. I think it's fine because imagine if you caused or threatened to cause millions or billions of pounds worth of damage to the economy. That could have a major effect on democracy, on the ability of politicians to pursue policies that they want to. And I think it would be fanciful to say, oh, the IRA have wrecked the City of London, that doesn't matter, that doesn't qualify as terrorism. So I think it's fine to have it that wide, but what it does mean is you've got to use it wisely. So I suppose the answer is actually, Tom, yeah, let's have a broad rule, but let's allow the courts to look at it. I think the court looking at it is completely fine. I should say these are very experienced judges, but I think that the way in which they approach the operational question is the one that the government will be testing.
And to those people who say the definition of terrorism is wrong if you include damage to property, because damage to property cannot be terrorism, what would you say?
Well, as I say, just imagine causing £2 billion worth of damage to a property in the centre of London. I mean, if you did that, you could have a major effect on the UK economy. And if you threaten to do that again and again and again, politicians will start thinking, we better change our policies in favour of what this group wants. So if you like, terrorism is about coercion. The most awful way of coercing people to change their policies is by threatening to kill people, but also causing massive of economic damage. I mean, in my view anyway, could put people out of jobs, people will commit suicide, they will have wrecked lives, the government won't be able to operate. So I think that to exclude all property damage would be crazy. Some people say, well, you should only have property damage if it involves violence. So a good example, I would say, or a good test case is, what if you took some paint and you slowly poured it onto Van Gogh's sunflowers? Now you could cause 32 or 100 million pounds worth of damage, but it wouldn't be violent. And I think you might say, that doesn't really pass the sniff test. This doesn't look like terrorism. But if you went along to a huge warehouse containing a big data centre and you burnt it to the ground and attacked it with hammers, you might say, yes, that's quite violent. So it's not an easy question.
Really appreciate your time, as always, for coming on the programme. Jonathan Hall, KC, is the UK's independent reviewer of terrorism legislation and state threat legislation. It is difficult, that. I find that the quote is, Palestine Action has organised and undertaken actions amounting to terrorism, but that the nature and scale of their activities falling within the definition of terrorism had not yet reached the level, scale and persistence to warrant prescription. Do you celebrate this decision by the High Court, even though it is still it is still part of the terror legislation to support Palestine Action? It's still a prescribed group because the government is appealing. Do you support the government in appealing this decision? 03456060973. Get your calls after this. Tom Swarbrick here, 4:15.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. On the M25 clockwise in Hertfordshire, there are long delays because of an accident.